What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL video. In this video, I'm here to break down and count down the top 10 most overrated, overvalued NFL players by the NFL media, NFL teams, and of course, NFL fans. These are players that just straight up don't live up to their name, or players that are overpaid, or just are not good anymore, and people still think they are. Let's kick off this list with number 10, Paul Richardson, the wide receiver of the Washington Redskins. Now, why is Paul Richardson, a guy that's still relatively unknown and making his way up the league ladder, considered an overrated player by my standards? Well, it's because the Washington Redskins have decided to make Paul Richardson the 16th highest paid receiver in the NFL. And when you're talking about the 16th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, you're talking about 32 number one receivers. And you're telling me that Paul Richardson, who has only ever had one 100-yard game, which just came this past season, is a top half number one wide receiver? No. Paul Richardson is a jump ball receiver. He's a decent number two. He can stretch the field. He has good athleticism, but he's not necessarily a receiver that gains a ton of separation. He's not necessarily a receiver that can run every route in the book. He's not necessarily a receiver that's going to come up with go-to third down catches. His best year in his NFL career is 44 catches for 703 yards and 6 touchdowns. That was this past year. And of course, that was with Russell Wilson. His previous seasons, he had no more than 29 catches as a member of the Seahawks. Before this year, he never had a season with more than 1 touchdown. His career numbers, 95 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 8 touchdowns. You look at that, and that's pretty much an okay season from Antonio Brown. The Redskins are putting a lot of money in a guy that's barely proven that he can be a go-to guy. That's why Paul Richardson is the 10th most overrated player in the NFL. At number 9, I have Marcus Mariota. Now, don't start getting your fingers going in the comments section just yet. Let me explain. I understand. Marcus Mariota is a very nice guy. He has a great personality, and overall, he's a very popular NFL player. But Marcus Mariota, oftentimes, let's think about it, Heisman Trophy winners come in with a lot of hype. And I think Mariota is no exception. He's a very likable guy on and off the field. He has great athleticism, good speed, and sometimes makes awesome plays. But people and NFL fans, NFL media, all of the above, they've let him slide for poor play. After a pretty good 2016, Marcus Mariota regressed heavily in 2017. Nobody is talking about Marcus Mariota's performance from 2017. In 15 games, Mariota had one of the worst seasons from a modern-day quarterback. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns and didn't even throw a touchdown per game in the modern NFL. That is horrible. 13 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. I will say that Mariota, it's a plus that he can run. He did score 5 touchdowns this past year, but from within the pocket and from a passing perspective, Mariota has continued to struggle, continued to not get better, and basically continued to regress. Once you shut down his ability to escape the pocket and run, Mariota has struggled. And that is just a fact. And when you look at his performance in 2017, he does not scream franchise quarterback. He does not scream breakout quarterback. I just don't hear enough people around the NFL and fans alike putting any pressure on Mariota to get better. Maybe that's because he's such a nice guy, but I'm going to be the one to say, hey, Marcus Mariota, you need to get better, and you need to get better fast. You're overrated at number 9. At number 8, I have Sammy Watkins. Now, Sammy Watkins, another guy that a lot of people like. And I feel like a lot of people are going to dislike my list because I'm putting a lot of people that a lot of people like on this list. And that's fine. But Sammy Watkins was expected to be the next stud receiver in the NFL. And can we just straight up say he has not become that? He was drafted in the same year as OBJ, the same year as Brandon Cooks. And those two players have both been substantially better thus far in their careers. And oh yeah, he was picked ahead of both of those players. This is a guy that's bounced around already early in his career. He's now on his third team within 1 year. You have to scratch your head. And I know there were rumors, and I know there were people saying, hey, Sean McVay and the LA Rams, they wanted to keep him around this season. But the fact is they didn't. And instead, they went out and traded a first-round pick for his buddy Brandon Cooks, who was in the same draft, like I said. Even in the LA Ram offense with Sean McVay, who's considered one of the better offensive minds in the league, Watkins struggled to get open consistently and lacks the ability to separate versus top cover corners. It's just that simple. He lacks the ability to get open. He lacks the ability to consistently beat man-to-man coverage. And I think a lot of that has started after his first 2 seasons where he was pretty good. I mean, he started in decent fashion in Buffalo, 1,900 yards in his first 2 years. But then Sammy's injuries caught up with him, and he started to get injured. And that significantly slowed him down and taken away what's made him special. His speed made him special, and in part his aggression and just strength as a receiver. Those 3 things made Sammy Watkins a great prospect. Watkins is being paid as a top 12 wide receiver by the Kansas City Chiefs, which is pretty ridiculous. I'm not saying Watkins is a bad receiver, but after only gaining 500 yards last year on one of the game's best offenses in LA, Watkins is better suited to me as a number 2 in a place like Kansas City alongside Tyreek Hill, who's a legit number 1, than as a number 1 threat on an offense. And I think it's time to put the Sammy Watkins is going to be a star to bed. And I think the Sammy Watkins being a number 1 receiver will probably never happen. And I think we just need to be satisfied with him being a number 2. That's why Sammy Watkins is overrated. At number 7, Sam Bradford. Remember when Sam Bradford was the first overall pick of the St. Louis Rams? Yeah, St. Louis Rams. Feels like a long time ago, and he's never, ever, ever, ever lived up to the first overall pick status. He hasn't been bad, but his career has never been close to Pro Bowl level. And worst of all, he's been hurt just about every year of his career. Yet he continuously, for some reason, gets these contracts that make you shake your head. What makes you think that you can count on Sam Bradford for consistent season, for longevity? Sam Bradford continuously comes out and he shows you a bit of something. A guy that can manage a game, a guy that can maybe make a couple plays here and there throughout a game. And yeah, he's an okay quarterback. But he continuously gets hurt, and he continuously gets paid like he still has potential, and like he still can be a Pro Bowl starting star quarterback. Why are the Arizona Cardinals, even though it's only 1 year, he's only making $1 million less than Phillip Rivers, Cam Newton, and Tom Brady? Tom Brady, Sam Bradford. They should not be in the same sentence, okay? Cam Newton, Sam Bradford should not be in the same sentence, and Phillip Rivers, Sam Bradford should not be in the same sentence. Sam Bradford has never really done anything significant in his NFL career, and even on a team like Minnesota, he failed to take advantage of that opportunity, where Case Keenum outplayed Sam Bradford by quite a good margin. So I'm just saying, this shouldn't be happening 8 years into a guy's career. Just because he was a first overall pick and has shown some flashes of good play doesn't mean you should continuously just go out and pay this guy when you know he's just a game manager. He is stealing money from NFL franchises, and it's ridiculous. That's why Sam Bradford's at number 7. At number 6, I have Terrelle Pryor. And I feel bad putting Terrelle Pryor on this list, because when you think of Terrelle Pryor, you think of a great athlete. But unfortunately, even though he's an awesome athlete, he really just isn't a great football player. He's just not great at any position. Last year, Pryor was picked by many, especially those in the fantasy community, to be a breakout wide receiver and take over the NFL with the Redskins. Well, as we know, that didn't quite work out. Pryor only caught 20 passes from the Redskins for 240 yards. Again, you got to think, his days in Cleveland, he was the only guy in town. There's no Josh Gordon, and there was really no number 2. So Pryor was getting a lot of targets, and when you're fed the ball that much, you're probably going to put up decent statistics. But last year, Pryor showed he's not quite the sound receiver that we thought he could be. And we shouldn't just keep saying Pryor is better than he is because of his expected potential and his athleticism rather than his actual production on the field. And that's what bugs me about Terrelle Pryor. He's sort of a big name because he converted from quarterback to receiver, and people still put him on this pedestal that he really shouldn't be on as an NFL player. He's nothing more than a depth receiver, and I think people still think he can be more than that. At number 6, I have Terrelle Pryor. At number 5, I have Jabrill Peppers. Maybe a shocker on this list. I've said since before he was drafted that Jabrill Peppers is an overrated player at the next level, being the NFL. He was an electrifying college player, but that's a lot of what made him a bust coming to the NFL. And I know I shouldn't label him a bust already, but being that he was drafted in the first round, I feel like that's just too high of expectations for a guy that really didn't have a position in college and really wasn't great at any position in college. Sometimes it's good that you have versatility in college, but when you actually turn on the tape of Jabrill Peppers at Michigan, you could tell that this guy was sort of being hidden by the Michigan defense because they didn't really know where to put him. And when somebody like Jim Harbaugh, who's an NFL good coach, goes to college and then tries to hide a guy that's expected to be a first-round pick on defense in different spots and different positions so he can succeed and not necessarily put him out there just to be a stud, it kind of makes you scratch your head. And then for him to be drafted in the first round as a safety really doesn't make a lot of sense. According to Pro Football Focus, Peppers was one of the worst safeties in the NFL last year. The 78th best safety in the NFL last year. I think Peppers is the classic example of overvaluing a player based on college and his reputation in college and how cool he was in college and draft position rather than actual performance and watching the tape and watching the games and taking away that bias. And that's why Jabrill Peppers is overrated at number 5. At number 4, I have Vic Beasley. The hype around Vic Beasley was pretty wild last year. After he led the league in NFL sacks, why wouldn't it have been wild? But little did the casual NFL fan actually know that those statistics that Vic Beasley got in 2016 did not exactly show his impact on his own football team. Beasley is a fine pass rusher in a limited role. He has never actually been a starting defensive end in Atlanta. If you actually check how many games he started last year and actually check their depth chart, you'll see that Vic Beasley is not actually a starting defensive end or edge rusher. And this is mostly due because he's not a great all-around player. Yeah, he can at times have good games off the edge getting the quarterback, but his lack of run-stuffing abilities do not make him a complete defensive end. Beasley is an overall edge defender this past season, ranked 88th overall according to Pro Football Focus. After a season with 15 and a half sacks, Beasley only finished with 5 in 2017. Maybe he was just a one-hit wonder last year. Maybe all the things fell in place last year. Maybe he just had an awesome year. And that's awesome for Vic Beasley. But we can't overrate somebody based off sack numbers. We can't overrate somebody based off getting sacks against bad teams and bad offensive lines and piling up sacks and numbers against bad offenses. Despite his inconsistency, his name and his 2016 season to me still have many around the NFL rating Beasley better than he should be rated. He isn't even the best defensive lineman on his own team. That would belong to Grady Jarrett. At number 3, I have Joe Flacco. Oh, Joe Flacco. Ever since he got that contract, have we seen Joe Flacco play anything but atrocious football? I mean, Joe Flacco has been named January Joe. And you got to give it to him. The guy has been fantastic throughout his career in the playoffs. But as just a regular season quarterback, this guy's been nothing but average or worse throughout his entire career. And yeah, Joe Flacco early in his career was probably better than people give him credit for because he wasn't in an offensive first team or offense system that really lent it to putting up statistics and putting up numbers. But man, has Joe Flacco been terrible lately. His arm, his deep ball isn't the same. His accuracy is off. He's always rattled under pressure. He doesn't lead the team or do anything extra that really puts him over the top. To me, Joe Flacco, that contract is ludicrous. I can't really say Joe Flacco's been anything but terrible and one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL for the past couple of years. And yeah, he won a Super Bowl, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your career should end after that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're an elite quarterback from then on and you belong. You should have to play year in and year out quality football. And to me, Joe Flacco hasn't done that since winning the Super Bowl. So Joe Flacco, to me, has been one of the most overrated quarterbacks and players in the NFL since that point. And I think it's going to continue. Lamar Jackson is there. I think he's eventually going to push Joe Flacco out of that job unless Joe Flacco seriously turns his game around this next season. At number 2, I have Eli Manning. Here come the Giants fans. Last year, I ranked Eli Manning at number 1 on the most overrated list. And again, he could be number 1 again this year. But I sort of unfairly placed Eli on the list last year, largely for his career being overrated. I basically made the case that Eli Manning is not a Hall of Fame quarterback, and a lot of people were upset by that. Some other people liked that, and, I still stand by what I said. I don't believe Eli Manning should be a Hall of Fame quarterback, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to make it, because he is going to. Let's just be honest. And that's why I thought he was overrated. This year, I'm going to more focus on the current Eli Manning. My problem with Eli is that everyone is always blaming everybody else for his shortcomings. He has no run game. He has no good coach. He has no offensive line. Everything is everybody else's fault when it comes to the New York Giants. It's simple. It's Eli, guys. It's Eli. That's why. It's Eli. He's just not good anymore. Okay? At one point, Eli was a good quarterback. I'll give you that. And at one point, maybe he was even an elite quarterback for maybe a year or two. But he's just not good anymore. He's just not at that level anymore. Other elite quarterbacks have bad offensive lines, like Russell Wilson, have bad defenses, like Breeze and Rodgers, but they remain elite. Not Eli. Eli has only been somewhat decent at times in the past couple of years because of Odell Beckham Jr. And if you don't believe me, check out these statistics. Let's take a look at Eli Manning with and without OBJ. With Odell Beckham, he's had 66 touchdowns and 29 interceptions. Pretty good, pretty quality. Without, 14 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. That's bad. That's a 91.5 rating compared to a 75 without. He has OBJ back. Top 3 receiver in the game. I'd argue probably number 2. They drafted Saquon Barkley, who's going to be arguably, the most talented running back in the league right off the bat. They signed Nate Solder. They drafted Hernandez on the offensive line. And they hired an offensive coach in Pat Shurmur, who, by the way, made Case Keenum, a journey backup, look good last year. So there's no more excuses for Eli. He's surrounded by arguably the best supporting cast on offense in the entire NFL. And I still don't think that changes his play drastically, which is why I still think he's overrated, even with all that help back, because he's just straight up lost his ability to put power on his throws. When you watch Eli Manning, he throws a lot of ducks. He throws a lot of balls that just don't have enough power to get it to the receiver. When he throws deep, it's just not there anymore. When he makes a tough throw across the field, it's just not there anymore. The zip on the ball has lost for Eli Manning. And I just think it's father time. And I just think it's time to go, and it's time to pack him up. And if Eli can't prove that he's better and he can be back to better Eli Manning with all this help, then he certainly is overrated. At number 1, the most overrated player in the NFL in 2018 is Dez Bryant. Ever since the no catch situation in Green Bay, it's been all downhill for Dez. He's had just over 2,000 yards in 3 seasons, after having 3 straight 1,000-yard years previous. Dez was actually one of the best receivers in the game not too long ago. The injuries, the quarterback change, the fits on the sidelines, and really his emotion just getting the best of him, it certainly hasn't helped Dez. I used to be a huge fan of Dez, but even I have noticed the drop in his play. His explosion is the biggest difference I notice. Corners just don't fear his deep speed anymore. They don't fear his ability to run. They don't fear his ability to go down the field and just burn them. They don't fear his athleticism no longer. He's become a jump ball wide receiver. His ability after the catch is diminished, and really he's become a distraction, always wanting the ball on the sidelines. Not only has Dez dropped from elite status, but he may not even be an option as a number 2 receiver. As I said, he just doesn't have the same athletic ability and burst that he used to. I'm hoping Dez can turn it around, but still, NFL fans are wondering why he's not been signed or picked up in free agency. It's because he's just not that good anymore. They instantly dream about what Dez could bring to an offense. Oh, what could he do in Green Bay? What could he do in New England? What if he played with Cam Newton? Dez is just not the same player, guys. He's overrated in my eyes. And many NFL fans, and even the Dallas Cowboys up until like a month ago, thought he was still an elite receiver. Finally, Dallas let the world know how good Dez Bryant actually is. And he wasn't worth it to them. And his contract wasn't worth it. And he just wasn't worth it because he's just not that good anymore. Dez will play for a team in 2018. I really have no doubt about that. But he just needs to check his ego at the door. He needs to go to work. And he needs to understand that a big contract won't be coming his way. His production has not been there for quite some time, ever since 2014. And I hope Dez can turn it around, but I'm afraid that his explosion and his ability to really make a difference as a receiver, those days have passed. Dez Bryant is the most overrated player in the NFL, and that is my top 10 most overrated players in the NFL for 2018. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe for more NFL videos. It's Mitch of TheBottomLineView, and peace out.